All right. Hello, everybody. Sorry we are a little bit late tonight. Unforeseen circumstances, maybe way late if you thought that the stream was going to be happening on a Sunday, because here it is Monday, and Monday is when the stream is happening. There's been a little bit of a schedule flip in what we're planning on doing here. The weather has also taken a decided turn for the summer all the way here in May. So there's a fan going on the left of me right now, which hopefully isn't coming through too badly. It doesn't seem to be in my ears, but you never know. But in any case, we're already a little bit late, so let's go ahead and get things rolling. Hello, fellow Sublime Text Fanatics. OdatNurd here, saluting just as in videos on the channel, even though nobody can see me. Welcome to tonight's live stream. First order of business, yes, it is Monday, and we are live streaming tonight on Monday instead of Sunday. And the reason for that more or less has to do with schedule changes in my everyday life that are making Monday mornings be a lot more, let's say, action packed than they used to be. So staying up late on a Sunday to stream is something that I don't want to be doing, at least for the time being. So we're swapping the stream to be Mondays instead, which coincides with regular video drops on the other channel, which of course is, I imagine, linked down in below of this particular live stream. And yeah, we're moving along the path of videos. We've been doing Monday videos for a while now. There are some more in the can. And that brings me to other news. Work has finally seen fit to replace my networking hardware so I can be properly connected to the mesh at work, which has its upsides and its downsides. The downside of which being that an SRX 320 by Juniper has two teeny tiny fans that kind of sound like a drone. So there's a slight possibility. I haven't done any work yet. I need to rejigger my desk because I also got a new Linux box. And in order to fit that one in, it's using all DisplayPort for all monitors. And I got a new monitor for it. And that means all the under desk cable trays need to be pulled out and new wires strung. And everything has to be laid out on the desk again. Once that's done, the networking hardware has to be set up, and we need to find a way to damp the sound of that thing, or I can't do live streams without going crazy, can't do work without going crazy, and probably also can't record videos either. So I'm going to try and get as many recorded for editing as I can in the next week before that happens. But watch the Twitter. There's a possibility there might not be a live stream next week while everything is still sorting itself out equipment wise. But have no fear, we shall return. And do let me know if you think that Monday nights are a better night for this than other nights. I also had the idea of doing a stream every 8 days instead of every 7 days, so that one week it would be Monday, and then it would be Tuesday, and then it would be Wednesday, and so on. So it would travel through the week, if you will, for people that maybe there are certain days of the week that it doesn't work as well for. The real downside there is I really can't handle a live stream at anything other than 8 p.m. PST. If there was interest, I could perhaps wake up quite early in the morning, which might help people that are overseas in the Europe type area. Looking at you, Keith. But, well, let me know in the comments below or on Twitter at OdatNurd. In any case, we are, as I said, already a little bit late here, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, I have constructed this list of things for us to work on, and 6 and 7 are holdovers from last week. I've sort of pushed them down because there's some other things I want to do first. So the first thing we want to tackle here, and honestly, based on my schedule and the way things, have been going lately, I've been concentrating on recording and videos and whatnot, and just, life sort of getting in the way. I haven't really had time to do any of my normal walk planning session type things for this stream. As I would normally on a weekend walk, spend my time while I'm walking. I'm thinking about that, but I was working on a different thing instead of this. So we're going to try to come up with something to do this, to open help from packaged files. In my head, I know what needs to happen generally, but we'll see how easy it is to pull that off, if you will, which I think requires us to also come up with packaged help, because I don't have any currently, I don't think. I guess maybe the hyperhelp would actually work for that, maybe. In any case, that's what we're going to work on there. And then we're going to work on switch over from hyperhelp author to hyperhelp. As we can see, I have this change log, let's close that for a second, of all of the versions of this package that have been released so far. Version 0.0.5 is actually the first version that theoretically anyone other than me might have seen, or people that follow the streams, because I released that version, and then on April 1st, I released the video on my channel, the other channel, for Snappy itself, which was being based on this. So everybody at that point that might have watched that video that set things up could have been using the package on that day. Theoretically, people could have been using it all along. Perhaps, people other than myself and my small team of testers are actually pulling that off. Who knows? But normally when you install a package control, if it has the correct files in it, would automatically display that information. I can't remember, I might have talked about this in a previous stream, would display that in its package control update, so that when the package updates, you know that it happened. Now here, HyperHelp Core is packing HyperHelp within itself and bootstrapping it out. And in that particular case, what's happening here is we're not getting that sort of thing, but maybe we might want to provide information about what has changed in the system. So my theory is to create, we have this change log here, a command that could open this, which would be in the command palette and in the menu. And then also when the code gets bootstrapped, we can open this up again. We have the include a stub change log here. It's listed as a task there. We might want to clean this up a little bit, or maybe also include stuff from HyperHelp core itself. I'm not sure. And we create a command that will display this change log, and then we could say that when the package bootstraps, along with popping up a dialog box to tell you that it happened, it could also do something so that the change log will be seen. Now, that part is slightly tricky to pull off, because I'm not 100% sure that it would pull the correct version of the file. Basically, what we want to try to do is display the package file and then restart, but I don't think that'll work. And if we get that far, we'll see why that is, in which case we have to do something so that on the next restart, while it's doing the bootstrap check, it knows that it bootstrapped last time and should display the change log. And then lastly, number 5 here is add a setting to block that from happening, which will default to off. People can turn it on if they want, because I know there are some people out there that don't want to know when their packages get updated. I personally live for the excitement of a message telling me that something has been updated, with the sole exception of Git Gutter, because it would, update 19 times every 15 seconds, and every time I started Sublime, there'd be a new update for it. That's kind of annoying. I'm not trying to spam anybody with update messages, but as we can see, the last time anything was released in here was April 1st, and it's May now, so that's probably not much of an issue. So, open help from packaged files. We can only open help files if they're unpacked, so we need to be able to open a packed version, make it editable, and set up an event handler to allow it to save properly. So I think the first thing we might want to do is test how that might work right now. So I'm going to say edit help. Well, let's say edit help in edit help file. Yeah, move that mouse out of the way. Oh, hang on a second. Okay. Hello, sir. My puppy has decided to abandon my wife and come visit us here in the Codatorium. What a what a guy. Presumably he wants to be angry if my toes twitch while I'm thinking. Okay, so we're going to edit a help file. And now, because we don't have any help files open, now again, I went over this in my video for, well, actually, I don't know if I did go over this in my video for HyperHelp Author. To be honest, I'm not sure. I recorded more stuff than was in some of the videos, so I can never remember what actually stayed in and what didn't. But you can choose any package you want if you choose the command and there's not a help file or package already displaying anywhere, then it asks you what help package first. Otherwise, it assumes it's the one you're looking at. I might have touched on this in the HyperHelp author video, but say we would pick the HyperHelp help because that's definitely theoretically packed. And if we pick this, okay, I'm getting an error dialog box on the incorrect monitor that says specified help file does not exist, cannot open. Good. That is quote unquote theoretically what we want. And if I edit help index and pick the same thing, we get the same thing. Specified help index does not exist, cannot open. So that's, good. That's what we want. Now this is HyperHelp author, so I shouldn't even be looking at that code right now. We want to be in this bit here. And in the commands, edit help and edit index. So if we edit help first, we can open both of these. We're going to see they're both very simplistic. This finds the current help package and the current help file, and then HyperHelp author. Oh, sorry, this is the context version. Excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong ones. We want edit help and edit index. Cha-cha. So edit index, and we can close that for the time being, so we can see more here. Edit index here, we can see it gets the current help package. It does that, and then it calls open help index from common. And what that is going to do is find a local help index and complain, but then tell the file to open. So this code here would need more work to be able to handle the case where because the edit index is deferring everything to this, it's specifically passing the package information for the help info, or the help index information for the index it's supposed to open and say, hey, open this, right? And this code is saying, okay, well, based on that, try to load it locally. And if we can't find it, we get unhappy. Otherwise, we open it. So if this was smarter, instead of displaying this, it could do something else and try to find it on another way. So that's one thing we can do there. So that's what we care about for edit index. And I think edit help should more or less do the same thing. It calls open local help, which is probably also in common if I had to guess. Yeah, it's like right above that one. Open help, open local help, open help. So these two things are the things that need to change to be able to pick files that are packed. And then we need a little bit of extra magic in them. And the reason for that is something like this. Okay, manually, what would we want to do? If we used view package file, we could say hyperhelp, and then the help is in doc. No, is it in help? Can't even remember. Hyperhelp.json. So here's all the, yeah, it wasn't help. Okay. If we said we wanted to edit the help index, this is the file that it would try to open. It would open hyperhelp help hyperhelp.json because the package info here knows that that's what the file is named. Sorry, for the index here. It knows based on that what that path is supposed to be. So if it actually opened it like so, now we can use the same methodology to open the package resource as that local thing is doing. I think maybe even open file is the way to pull that off. This file is read only right now, so there's no way for me to be able to type into it. So one thing that you want to have to do is say view.set read only false. That allows you to be able to edit it. Okay, now the other thing is its file name is theoretically correct, right? But there's no package directory named hyperhelp/help. At least I don't think there is, but we can totally check that out by using this. And if we said hyperhelp, oh, I guess maybe it is actually exist in here. Wait for the file manager to slowly open. This is a very slow, tiny hard drive. See, there's a file packet. There's a folder here named resources, but there's no folder named help. So if you made some changes to this and tried to save the file, you get this. There's no such file or directory. Now, it's even worse if you weren't an author of this package, you wouldn't have a HyperHelp folder in your packages directory at all. Remember, HyperHelp gets very angry with you when it exists there, and it's only that I have magic folders open that's allowing it to even do that to begin with, to even have that thing there without displaying an irritating message to tell you you're doing something wrong. There wouldn't actually even be a packages folder there at all. So along with everything else, we also need an on pre-save event handler that tries to recreate the location inside of the packages folder right before the file is saved so that the save will actually work. And in order to do that, when we open a file this way, we would apply a setting to it, and then the on pre-save will only trigger for buffers that have that setting and ensure that their path actually exists, and life will be good. And the same thing needs to be done for editing help as well. So close without saving on that thing. Now, the other issue that we're going to have is I might even say, if I picked this is definitely a file that doesn't exist on disk. This is definitely from a package. Again, we can tell by I can't type into this. Anytime you use this and the file is actually backed on disk, the file will be opened as per normal and you'd be able to edit it. So what happens if I quit Sublime and then restart? Notice the file is gone now because it's not on disk and Sublime automatically closes tabs for files that don't exist. So when we get down to this one here, we can't say that we just bootstrapped, so open the change log, because if we did, then it's going to tell you, hey, restart Sublime, and when you do, the change log is gone. So we need to set some sort of temporary setting to allow us to know that we should do that on boot. And I have an idea of how we would pull that off as well. But let's go ahead and wind ourselves back up to here and discuss what exactly it is we're going to do here. As a matter of fact, just for our own purposes here, see, just so we can see this package is empty, I'm going to remove that folder. So it's not there at all, right? Which is probably okay. I mean, we'll find out. And exit out of there. So now it's well and truly broken, if you will. So let's say, what exactly is this thing doing here? Now this is HyperHelp author that's doing this. So attempt to open the provided help file locally for editing. So the window, when you call this function, you're going to give it a package info that is the index hyperhelp.json parsed index of the help package that the help file is stored in. You're going to get the name of a help file like index.txt or whatever. And then you're going to get past the window to open the file in. And if you don't provide one, then you get the active window. And then we have to get a local path, which is the local help file name of this, which is, we'll see if we go in here, I'm going to call it right now, uses the document root of the package information and the help file to come up with the appropriate thing. Yeah, and it normalizes the path. So that's pretty simplistic for what it is we want. Now we might actually even want, this bit here. Maybe we want to make a packed help file name that comes up with the appropriate resource. But that is, whoops, that is not what we're supposed to be doing here. We're opening a local help file in this one. And again, index is the same thing. As we can see, local index does the exact same shebang as that does. So the first thing to note is that I have some coffee here that tastes like a cinnamon bun, so I'm going to take a sip now. Yeah, that's the stuff. Okay, then lost my train of thought. So what we're going to say here is we still want to do that. We still want to get the local help file name, but here what's happening is if that file doesn't exist, we say, hey, we can't open that. You go to hell. And then we return so that it gets logged, it gets a dialog box, and it doesn't try to do anything else. Other than that, it does this. It does the stuff you might expect. It opens the file, it sets the settings to hyperhelp author, and if the view isn't still loading, then it applies the authoring settings. Now, this is a two-part thing here. We set this setting to be true, and then we say if this view is done loading, then apply authoring settings. And if we skipped to this location, we'll see that this says it sets the syntax and that sort of business. Now this actually gets triggered not just at the place that we saw it, but also I picked the wrong one, in another location. Oh, sorry, yeah, this is the correct one, in apply author settings, which happens in on load, as we can see there. If that setting is set, then remove it and apply authoring settings. So the general idea there is, let's go back to where we started, that if the view is already done loading by the time we get here, then we can go ahead and apply the settings right away. If not, we have to wait for the thing to be done loading, because until the buffer is done loading, most API calls don't do anything interesting. Now, if we were to use this and, whoops, missed a key, scoop it over here. It was open file, this one here. Opens the named file, returns the corresponding view if the file is already open, brought to the front. Now, okay, so I think, note that as file loading is asynchronous, operations on the return view won't be possible until is loading method returns false, which is why we have that line right over there on the left column in line 127. So that is not what I was thinking of. Oh, do I have a? I should totally bookmark that. Browse available help, user help index. I could probably do that too. Okay, just bookmark this. Oh, poop. It's totally a bug. Look, the syntax switched to batch file. Okay, let's go that again. Browse available help, user help index. Create a. Wow, that happens every time now. I wonder if I have come up with a usable Browse available help, user help index. Wow. In the interest of figuring out what's going on here, notice I hit the thing for show overlay and the overlay is way up outside the top of the window. That's probably not good. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to say browse available help and pick user from the list. I'm going to do that. Now I'm going to push the B key, and what do we see as a command logged? We see that say hyperhelp prompt create bookmark, which is the actual command that is supposed to be executed, but what actually happens is born again shell is being set as the syntax. And that is most decidedly, this is the first time, this isn't the first time this has happened. This is the first time it's happened in a way that was 100% reproducible, which is weird. Whoops, back it up. Let's get ahead and continue on and say create bookmark for this file. Sublime commands and turn the logging off. Okay, now if I was smart, I would make a note that around about minute 25 is the part of this recording that I can pull out and put somewhere else, because that is definitely some wiggy stuff going on. Okay, but in any case, back to the job at hand. Open file as a command opens the specified file, will dynamically open resource files from Sublime package archives as read-only if the specified override file doesn't exist. So file, absolute or relative path to the file to be opened. Relative paths will originate from the recently accessed directory, e.g. the directory of the currently opened file, expand snippet-like variables. So on the face of it, that's neat, except that we rely on window.openFile to tell us the actual file being open. So is there a way for us to know which file? Because what I'm thinking here is we have local help file name. It says it will dynamically open resource files from archives as read-only, and it expands snippet variables like dollar packages, which means that instead of trying to open the file locally with this, it could just pass it to window.run command open file and then see what the active file is. Now there's a reason that it's being done this way and not the way it's being done this way and not this way. And the reason has everything to do with the command for creating help in a new package, which is definitely something I outlined in the HyperHelp author video when I made it. You select a package, it immediately creates the appropriate directory, it creates a help index inside there, it writes an index.txt file, and then it asks you if you want to open it. And when you say yes, if you say yes, it calls these to open both of those files. But there are package resources because they're written into a package, but there's a cataloging process that happens in the internals of Sublime that notices files appearing and files going away and stuff, which is how it knows to reload plugins and settings and such when they happen. And that part happens in a thread different than the command dispatching thread. So if you create a package resource from a command and then immediately try to load it, there's a probability. Sometimes it doesn't happen, sometimes it does, So you can't trust it. It won't be, you would ask it, does this resource exist? And it'll say no, because it actually hasn't gotten to the part yet in another thread where it's found it. Or perhaps we only can guess implementation details. The other thread finds it right away and it's available, but because our thread, maybe it was holding a lock, we don't get to see the update until afterwards. In any case, that's why this exists. So we don't want to just do this and then we don't want to not do this and just call this command, because that might not work in some situations. So what we do want to try to do is maybe try to open it ourselves, or if the file doesn't exist, call this to open it or to try to open it or something along those lines, just to make sure that it'll always work. We can, because we know it and the system knows if the file's on disk, um, even if Sublime doesn't, which is sort of, I think, why we put this off in the last stream and why this might be something that just takes the entirety of this stream in order to finish. But if that's the case, then I can retroactively change the thumbnail or something on this video because the title is tracking changes, which isn't actually what's happening here, which is unfortunate because I thought this was going to be a lot faster than it actually is. So that is, yeah, well, not the greatest, but what can you do? So let's think about what we want to do here. This gets, again, the local help file name, which takes the packages path and the document root and the help file and comes up with a complete file name. We saw it in that error dialog. It would be, for me, hometmartin.config sublime text 3 packages hyperhelp help in hyperhelp.json is the path that falls out of, well, this one, right? This one actually has to go out of its way to unmangle part of the thing because the index file it wants is already a package specification. So it has to throw the packages directory off so it can add it back on to the full packages location. So we might want, and I don't know, do we have something like this? I assume we don't. Yeah. Help file name. So this is in source common from hyperhelp author.source.common. I don't think I can do this. Maybe I can. Cool. That does point out that I need a package info though, so that's kind of unfortunate. In order to be able to invoke that thing. From hyperhelp core.core import help index list. And then we also want this one. And then we want to say x equals help index list for hyper help, let's say. And there's our index. Okay, so maybe we'll actually change that to the appropriate package info, like so. And we might also say import help index list and, from local help file name and local help index, just so we can play around with these. And local help index. Oops, what did I do? Oh, I hit that key when I should not have. So if I said local help index for package info, I get that, which is more or less what I would have expected to see. right? We want the full path name there. And if I said local help file name for package info and let's say index.txt, then we get the location of that particular file, which as it transpires is in the document. See, it's getting it out of the document root here and adding the help file, whereas here it's taking the existing package resource for the index file and throwing part of it off. Now, if I said sublime.find resources hyperhelp.json, we'll get packages hyperhelp help hyperhelp.json, this thing right here. Okay. And we got that from find resources. And if I said package info.index file, we would see it's the exact same thing. So if we came to open help index, we just need to have the file open for editing if it's an index. So let's try that one first, and then we can see what it is we want to do here. So we don't need a special remote help index for this because we just need this thing, really. Now, what happens? Now, we don't necessarily get an error message, do we? No. Okay, so let's do that. I guess what the problem we have is that won't do what we want. So just as, if I said window run command open file, which is what we had over here, and the file name was this, then I don't think this is going to open the file. Could be wrong. Yeah, because that's a relative path name. So that doesn't work, right? So we don't want that. But if instead of packages, it was $packages like this, then we know that this command expands snippet-like variables like platform and packages. So this will expand out to Sublime Packages path, and then we'll end up with the same path as that thing did. So that should open the index. And it does. So that is what we want there. So if that's the case, then perhaps we do want a def internal help index for package info. And we would return package info.index file.replace packages with that. I feel. Let's reload. So if we did that, now if we had to come back up to this big old thing we did here, local help file name, local help index, internal help index, and did that, then if we said local help index for package info, we get that. And if we say internal help index for package info, we get not quite the correct thing. Now, I think I'm gonna have to verify this by doing this, that this finds all instances and replaces them. Return a copy of the string with all occurrences of substring old replaced by new. If the optional argument count is given, only the first count occurrences are replaced. So we actually want this to be 1, like so. and reload, because maybe the package path might have, packages slash my help packages slash packages slash snappy. We don't want to replace all of them with that or it'll break the path. We only want the one we know is going to be the first one. And if that's the case, then if we did that again and said internal help is now that, which means that when we say open help index, if that doesn't exist, then we would say return window.run command open file, and the file would be internal help index for package info, but that's too long. So we probably would do that this way, I think. We might even spell it correctly. And we might bring that one down and over before we put it in. And we don't need this part anymore because it's not, if the local path doesn't, for the thing doesn't exist, it's going to pull it from the internal, right? Now that's still not going to do what we want. So we don't want to return here per se, but that will at least make it so that if we did this and then, no, not that one, excuse me. If we said edit help file and then we said, oh, sorry, I picked the wrong one. Got to pick the one we actually edited, right? The index for hyperhelp. Oh, okay. Maybe we push the key and then we try it again for hyperhelp. And here's the index. It successfully loaded the index. The cursor's way at the bottom. I don't know that that's necessarily a thing that normally happens, but that part's happening. So if that's the case, then we need that thing that I said before. We need a little bit of extra stuff here. And in particular, we need to say view equals window dot active view. Oh, don't put a semicolon. That's a thing, right? Yep. And then we need to say view dot set read only false, because we can't type in this thing. So that's probably not what we want. And that will get us part of the way there. So right now we can't do that. So if we close that file and do it again, now, oh, did I reload that? That did not seem to. Let's do that. Double check. Maybe there's more to this. Maybe there's a reason I did not do this previously. Edit help index. Yeah, that's not doing what one might expect. Maybe we want to do this slightly differently, but we'll do that for now. Whoops, we are not getting any errors in there. So edit. Oh, come on. Edit help index for that. We're getting a Sublime view object at. Okay, so that seems to be what one might expect. Oh, you know what? I think we might not be able to fiddle with it for that reason that I already said. Just to verify that that's actually finding what we expect it to find. It is totally finding the correct thing, but there's that happening. So as a test, sublime.set timeout for, let's say, lambda. If I did that, and assuming I picked the correct order for that, okay, so hurrah! So there's a little bit of extra work that's going to have to happen here. So what we need is to open the HyperHelp author events, which is this one. Now you'll notice that this says on load, apply author settings to the view. If the view settings has the auth, it applies authoring settings after erasing. If view.settings.get under HH open int none is not none, then view.settings.erase HH open internal, and we might say view.set read only false, like so. And if I was to open a file, cursor ends up there. Okay, let's pick a file that's not currently open, like this one. See, I get the cursor on column 1, line 1, right? But here that doesn't happen. It's opening at the bottom, and I don't like that. We may be able to fix that. So we're going to do this first. We're going to, we're going to bloop this bit out like this. And we're going to say this view.settings.set HH open int true instead of that part, right? So now if I reload everything, now when I say edit help index for this thing, I should be able to edit, I would have thought. I'm not sure, maybe that's not actually getting called. Opened an internal file for editing, like so. Okay, so we'll go like that. That definitely reloaded. And it says opened an internal file for editing, but it's still not. Huh. Well, if I was going to be totally honest, that is not what I would have expected to have happened in this circumstance. So, excuse me. Not entirely sure. Got something caught in my throat. Not entirely sure where to go with this because we clearly saw that it view.cell.clear, view.cell.add sublime region 0. Does that at least do something interesting? No. Even though it happens in on, whoa. Even though it happens in onload. It'd be interesting to see what happened there because I accidentally swapped to another desktop. So this is interesting because this is not at all what I would have expected to be the case. If I edit the help index for the authoring tools, I get, the functionality that I would have expected to get. See what we got. Select color scheme, view resource. Just calls open file. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess that's doing what that command does. So there's that. There's nothing funky that I'm doing here to make this happen. There's another way to pull this off. So what we could try is that, I suppose. So let's say we don't do this at all. I mean, we're still going to need that, yeah, but not for this. So we'll go ahead and zoop that out. Oh, that also happens on pre-save as well. Okay, well, in any case, go ahead and put that back to the way it was and reload. If we don't care about that just now, what we could do is say if this exists, then just open the file and we're good. Otherwise, do this part. That makes this part nicer, less indented, don't need a return, don't need an extra line. And if we verify that I actually reloaded that and then say edit help index and pick the authoring tools, which do have a local help index, it just opens, which is, what we want. Now, if that's not the case, then what do we do? Load resource. The name should be in the format blop, blop, blop. Okay, so we don't, if that's the case, then we don't need this thing. Put it back to the way that it was. And instead, because that's just, package info dot, that thing I just erased that I already forget. Index file. So what we would then do, maybe we don't even need that as a path. View equals, whoops, window.new file. Is that how that works? Well, creates a new file. The returned view will be empty and its isLoaded method will return true. Oh, yeah. Okay, so there are some potential issues to be had here. We would open a new file and say syntax is equal to, do I have a, I don't have one of those. Oh, that's an unfortunate level of unfortunateness. So we're going to get the syntax that's set here, which is this monster thing, like so. And that syntax is equal to that. Okay, so we're going to create a new file. We don't want that. Oh, sorry. I put that in the wrong spot. Cut that, paste it here. So we don't want that or that. Well, we do still want that, so we'll leave that there for the time being. And that will create a new file and apply the appropriate syntax. So if we said edit help index, oh, well, yeah, now it's just automatically editing that one. So we got to close both of those. Edit help index for hyperhelp. It's magically working now. Oh, because, huh. Oh, I see. Yeah, if I reloaded that first so that it's actually, yeah, okay. Now, it created a new file. It's a type help index. It's editable, but it doesn't have the right stuff, right? The next thing that we would have to do here, after we create the file, is say view.retarget and retarget it to the path of local path, like this. Reload. Now with that, it's an undocumented thing which tells the view, here's your file name, which normally only happens when you save, which is not super safe to do, except that if this was happening, then the file would have existed and we wouldn't have gotten to this part, right? So open help index for hyperhelp, and we end up with something that has the appropriate file name, it just has no content in it, and it has the correct syntax. So the next thing we need to do is say content is equal to sublime.load resource, and what we would load is this. And then view.append. Oh, sorry. View.run command append, and we're going to append the characters of content like this. So when we edit help index for hyperhelp, and we reload and discover that we broke the code, and now it's reloaded. Been doing a lot of single plugin work lately, so I'm kind of out of the habit of having to be able to do that, and we end up with global name content is not defined. Really? What did I call it? Did I remove it? Did I not just did I just delete something I wasn't supposed to delete? Yeah, I did, didn't I? That's what I meant to do. Boy, it's one of those nights. Edit help index hyperhelp. Boop. And okay, now the problem is it's thinks it's modified when it's not. So that's an unfortunate turn of events right there. But this is the index. So the next thing that we would need to worry about here is maybe change the order of this. We're going to get the content. Now, I'm not sure, does this... spring an error. Yes. So I might need that error message after all. So we'll maybe bring that back with that thing. So we'll try this. And if there's an error, we do this. Specified help index does not exist, cannot open, because this could be invoked for some with a specific package name. Maybe that's bunk. So that's going to return true and be done. So now we know we definitely have the content, right? So we create the view. And then we put the content inside it like this. We say view.setScratch true. We append the characters. View.setScratch false. Retarget it. And set that setting so we'll know later. And remember to reload it, and let's see what that does, because I have a feeling that mini diff might make us mildly unhappy. Why does that? Didn't display an error, but it still thinks that it's invalid. If I try to save it, it should fail. So it might be because the directory isn't there. Might be the reason that that is the case. So to test that, this is hyperhelp help. So if I went back to here and said make dir minus p hyperhelp help like that, the file is still missing though. So that might be messing with it too. Yeah, okay. But I could actually save it and it'll work now, and it's in there. So if we're going to remove that, here's what we're going to do. We're going to leave scratch as true. No, I don't know that we want to do that either, because I think that makes it not immediately not dirty itself up. Maybe if I retarget it first. Hang on, to put that back. Just sort of thinking out loud here that if, okay, so yeah, you don't want to retarget it until the content is in there. Maybe like that. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Edit help index for that. Still not kosher. If we left this part off, for example, then I believe that would solve the problem, kinda. Oh. Too used to typing that. And yeah, see now it thinks the content changed. So we do need the very first thing to that happens is that, no matter what, I think is the magic there. So there's that. Maybe also, oh, we can make the mini diff go away. We can say view.set reference document to content. And then that won't happen, assuming I remember that correctly. Yeah, until you start typing. And see, now because it's true, now because set scratch is true, the file doesn't look like it's modified, but modifying it fiddles that about, right? So if I put this back, and we can puzzle this out. Whether or not it's the correct way to do it, that is something that perhaps leaves itself to be desired as an example. Okay, here we go, and edit the help index for that. And yeah, okay, so here's what we can do. We create a new file with the appropriate syntax. We set it to be Scratch. Okay, let's close this so that it's not there. Okay, and save that and reload it. So we create a new empty tab. We set the syntax, which we can't do here because it's a hidden syntax, I think. Yeah. Then we'll go ahead and close that. We retarget it to local path, which is the path of the file that we already know doesn't exist up there. And yes, there's some minor race condition where somebody could create the file in the split second between when they tried to open it and when this code ran. And I mean, we could protect ourselves from that, but I don't know that that's necessarily a problem. And I don't know that there's a good way to fix it per se. And then we run the command append on the characters that we loaded, which will insert the text into the buffer without moving the cursor location. It's appended to the end. And then we set reference document to the content so that the mini diff functionality will track that as the content of the file, because otherwise it has a file name from the retarget and it knows that file doesn't exist on disk, so it thinks the whole file has changed, and we don't want that. And we have to leave it as Scratch so that when we type, so that the tab isn't marked as this, right, as dirty. So with that all in play, what we end up with is what we want. If we say edit help index and we choose hyperhelp, it opens the file. You see there's no error messages here. It opens the file. The cursor's at the top. The syntax, as we can see, is the syntax we want. The file name is correct. If we try to save it, it'll fail because the path's not there. But when we try to edit, although the diff does show changes, now that we tried to, now that we've tried to save it, I should say, is the thing here. Edit help index for hyperhelp like this. Okay, bonk. Now, if I don't try to save it, when I edit, the diff shows thus, right? But it's not marked as being modified until I try to save it, which is implicitly sets it to not scratch. But if I set it to not scratch here, it notices that the file doesn't exist. So we set this setting like that, and here in the hyperhelp author events, there's a couple of things we could do here. One, we could say def on modified if view.settings.get hh auth none is not none, then view.settings. This isn't what we actually want to do, but we're going to just, whoops, that's not even the, we want both of those to be the open int setting that we used over here, right? First we erase it, and then we can say if view.is scratch. I can't remember if that's the appropriate, yeah. If view.is scratch, then view.set scratch false. Okay, so that's one thing we can do. Now we reload this. Now remember, when we open this file, it's scratch, so when we try to edit, something doesn't happen. Now that was actually our code in play already working. So what's going to happen here is we're going to say edit help like this, right? We're going to pick this. It opens the file as it did before. It retargets it so it has the right name. It has the content of the file. The cursor's up at the front the way we want it to be. It has the syntax we want it to have. It has the appropriate reference document, and it has this setting. And when the thing is modified, when that setting is set, it erases the setting and then says, if this is a scratch buffer, don't make it scratch anymore. And now the file is marked as being dirty, like so. It still has the right path, and when I try to save it, it's still going to fail. Now, this is like 90% what we want. We need more stuff here. We want def, edit, internal file view, like so. Okay, now we're going to pull that. Well, I guess technically we're going to pull all of this, right? And we're going to do that. If this, so now we could come down here and just say underscore edit internal file view, and we could say if the view represents a help file or index that we opened from inside of a package, of a Sublime package file, then apply any appropriate state changes based on this event. And that's one thing that we would do is that. Now, I think what we're going to pass false here. Okay. And up here, we're going to say create folder. If create folder, do that. Now the idea here for this stuff is that still loads, right? We're going to call this for on modified. We're also going to call it for on pre-save. Like so. Now these might actually be better served as view event listeners. Actually. I think that's, yeah. I think we're going to do this as a view event listener, which is going to require fiddling some stuff. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say class hyper help internal file event listener from Sublime plugin dot view event listener. This no longer takes a view, so we pass it self.view, and on pre-save doesn't take, get one of those. We're going to edit internal file self.view true, like so. We can bump this up to here and bring it back and reflow it based on the event. Okay, so there's that. Now this isn't going to currently do squat, pardon my itchy ear, and my drinking of some water. We don't want that to happen there. And as a matter of fact, this part can change quite a bit too. Let's cut that out. Bring it down here. We don't need this part. This part is needed. And we're just going to sort of fiddle this up. First, we're not going to get a view. We're going to get a self. So no matter what, actually, this part only needs to happen for onModified, doesn't it? We don't need to do it for the other one. That's even better. Okay, so if the file is modified and it's scratched, then do that. And for onPreSave, we erase, and then we say print. Well, actually, we'll do this here. Print making this file no longer scratch, right? And here we'll say creating the appropriate folder structure for this file. We don't need that, and we don't need that. Now what we do need is at class method def is applicable class settings, and say return settings dot get hh open int none is not none. Well, we'll say that. We'll say false. What the hell? So the idea here, and again, that sort of, will reload, but the event handler isn't going to have any effect. So we're going to see that if we pick open help or edit help index and pick that, we get the content. We don't get that event happening, the one that for the onModified anymore. But what we did still do, whoops, don't do that, Drew. Don't do that, bro. Come on. Boop. You get up in this window. Thank you. We created the file. We set it to be scratch. Or we gave it the appropriate thing. We gave it the appropriate content and reference document. And then we set that setting to be true. Now, because this is a view event listener, then every time a settings change happens, it checks, Sublime checks this is applicable to say, does this event listener apply to this view? And this is just to stop our onModified from triggering for anything other than our own files, because that's not a zero-sum operation, right? So when you open, in the exact case that you open a index file or later a help file from inside of a package, it will do this bit here. Set that setting, find it's applicable. Sublime will create an instance of this view event handler, which means these events automatically get triggered for self.view. They don't take a view parameter because they're applicable. An instance of this is created specifically for the view that needs to get the thing. Now, we say here, whenever a modification happens, if this view is scratch, then make it not be scratch. So the very first time you type something in the file, it's immediately not made scratch anymore. So it's marked as dirty if you have that option turned on, which we can't do just out of hand, because if the path and file doesn't exist, Sublime shows the file as being dirty, right? So what we're doing here is saying that, yeah, we know the file's not there. That's okay. It's a scratch file. The first time you modify it, we say no longer a scratch file. You don't worry about that anymore. Now it can show that it's dirty, but the user expects that because they typed something in. Now they might get unexpected results when they undo any changes they might have made, but I'm not sure there's a way around that. And Package Resource Viewer has the same problem. The whole file goes away like this because that append is totally a command, right? I don't know that there's a way to stop that from happening. unless you can create a file with immediate content, but I don't think you can. Or an event listener that blocks the undo event when it's the very first thing in the stack. Maybe possible. That might be something interesting. So the first time you type something, this will happen. The very first time you try to save, we erase the setting. We might want to do this part first and then erase the setting. And once the settings change happens, Sublime will again say, hey, does this event listener apply to this view? The view will say no, it doesn't, or this will say no because that setting is now missing. So this will return false, and the event listener gets thrown away, and we don't need to worry about this stuff anymore. So we need to look for this in there, and we're going to find it here, and we're going to blap that in too, so that the file event listener is also in play. Close that, reload everything. Well, maybe not there, but here. And it loaded. So now, in the world of the purely theoretical, if we pick this and say that we want this one, we end up with the file opening the way we expect. I'm going to open the console now. The file is not dirty. As soon as I start typing, global name view is not defined. Okay, so shoot, what did I do? I forgot to add the self. And I also forgot to do it here, so that's okay. So let's reload that, try her one more time. These are the sorts of problems you see. So we open the file. No error messages. File is not modified. I type "neh." Now that said, making this file no longer scratch because the onModified event triggered. That one right there, right? We should not see that happen any longer because it made the file not scratch after we made that change. Whoops. And I pushed save and it said creating the appropriate folder structure for this file. I don't know why it says unable to reset file info. Maybe that has something to do with internal diffing. Reloading help index 4, loading help index 4. Ooh, look at that. That's totally an issue. Okay, so let's see if I can do that without fat fingering the command so we can track everything that's happening. Okay, so I can type. We no longer see that, right? If I try to undo, I'll take it back too far. We can't undo it back to the point where the file's not modified, unfortunately, except to detect somehow that we're at the only one thing in the undo buffer and it was the original thing, in which case undo should set the file back to being scratch again, which is something we could do. If I try to save, now I'm going to clear the console for this. If I try to save, we see unable to save, no such file or directory because the folders are missing, but we do see it saying creating the appropriate folder structure for this file. Then we see it saying unable to reset file info, which I think has something to do with the mini-diff functionality because I don't remember ever seeing it before. Then the handler for on post save up here triggers and calls reload index. And then we get the unable to save thing. Now it says it's trying to reload the help index, but it shouldn't, so I have a bad feeling. Browse available help. It does still kind of work. I think we see the error, no such file or directory. That is probably the result of this thing here. Okay, we might do this. If view.filename is not done and os.path.exists, what was I doing there? Path.exists, yeah. view.filename. So only do this part if, oh, I got to do that too. So if the setting for reload on save is set, then if the file name isn't none and it exists, then check to see if it's that and then do that. Now, this is a sort of an ugly nested if type thing. It'll stop that from happening. So let's reload and let's close that without saving. So now if I edit help index and this one, again, we're going to try to save. And we see that I forgot to do something there. Okay, so that is, oh, yeah. Reload that, save. Oh, look at that. I've also broke that because this should be brackets. Okay, so now, okay. Oh, I don't like the ordering here. Let's move this one up like this, and then this one can be here. So if the setting is reload on index, and well, we're already long, right? If, okay, well, maybe we'll do it all in one big thing. If reload index on save is set, and this is a index file, and this view has a file name, and this path exists, then reload help index. Okay, just to, because we don't want this to trigger maybe all the time every time any file saves, and we don't want it to test that files exist on disk before or after it saves them. Which is sort of a weird thing. After I saved, if the file exists, reload. This is the sort of weirdness you get into when you try to write bulletproof code. So edit help index hyper help. That part's working, making this no longer scratch, but only once. I try to save it. Now I'm going to clear that again just to see. I try to save it, and we see unable to save. So we get creating the appropriate folder structure, but not really. Unable to reset file info. Unable to save, and error, no such file or directory. I'm not sure why that one's happening, but this reload isn't happening anymore. Oh, sorry, the no such file or directory is a result of that. The reason it can't save is that thing right there. So that I think is doing exactly what we want, except for the part where we're not creating the path. So we can remove that. We know that's only happening once. Now, here's where things get sketchy. Create a directory name path with numeric mode. On some systems, mode is ignored. Where it's used, current new mask is first masked out. So we'll leave that part out. This function can also support paths relative to directory. It's possible to create temporary make durs, make recursive, like make dir, but makes all intermediate level directories needed to contain the leaf directory. If exist OK is false, an OS error is raised if the target error. Okay, so we don't want that to be happen. This function handles pass correctly. Okay. So this is kind of the call that we want. So I'm going to bring this back over to this other window over here. That's what we want. We want os.makeDirs here. And we want a path, and we want exist OK is equal to true. And maybe we don't even need to worry about that. But what we do need to know is if the file name was this. So we're going to say fname is equal to home T Martin that. So, whoops. Name is that. Import os. os.path.base name. Nope. Can never remember what we want there. Let's see. Python get directory from path, and it's going to tell me dir name. I should have known that. Base name, dir name. Oh, that's... I have to give up my badge for being a Linux nerd. That is the path that we're interested in. os.path.dirname fname doesn't exist. So we might say here, in on pre-save, we know that this is a file that we opened internally. So file, the path is equal to os.path.dirname of self.view.file name, which we know is definitely set because the only way this setting gets set on a view is when we call new file ourselves and ensure that it has a file name by using retarget. So it definitely has a file name if this is being triggered, because we always call retarget before we set the setting that only we know about. So the path is that, and then we can say if not os.path.exists path, then os makeDirs for path, and it's okay if it exists. We don't need that message, and whether that worked or not, we can do that business right there. Now, I guess it's possible for this makeDirs thing to trigger an exception, right? I mean, I can't imagine why it might not. So that might be something we want to track. Let's worry about that maybe later. So we're going to do this. So let's test our implementation so far. We say we want to edit a help file. The help file we want to edit is the hyperhelp system documentation. And there we have the file opened. It is currently set to be Scratch, I would imagine. View.isScratch should return true. But it also has a file name, right? And then I decide I want to change the description like so and push the save, and we see it's printing. Oh, sorry. It's reloading help index for hyperhelp, and loading it. So it seems to have worked. We notice the diff is totally telling us what we want, right? And if I was to browse available help, now that part is not necessarily correct. Because the description is different than it was. If I manually reload, now it's there. This is an example of that thing that I was mentioning earlier where the file doesn't seem to exist. Now we try to load it. This might require a little more action. So more action than we have time for at the current point anyway. Delete that. Now, browse available help. So it's still the quote unquote incorrect one. If I was to, I don't know, have to reload all help indexes to get that to work. Edit help index. For that one, you'll notice that part seems to be right. And again, we are scratch. So I don't know that there's a way around it. I mean, there must be a way around this happening. There needs to be a delay between when the save happens. Whoops. Delete that particular file, close without saving. Save that. And like, what did I do there? I changed this to on post save async so that it happens asynchronously, which is probably something that should have happened anyway, much the same as this one. Well, I think we want this one to be on pre-save because we want this to definitely happen right away. Now I'm going to quit and restart. Well, we'll go ahead and get rid of that too. Restart. We don't see any weird errors or anything, right? Okay, so I'm going to browse available help. Sorry, no, I'm going to edit help index for hyperhelp. And I'm going to change this to local unpacked. I'm going to save. That says reloading help index and blah, blah. And if I look at browse available help, do we see that? No, we don't. But if I load it again, we do. So that didn't save us. I mean, I guess we could leave that as async because that's the way that should have been anyway. There needs to be something communicated here, or when the reload index command happens, I would have thought that it was smart enough to load the local version of the file first. So that is actually a little surprising that that's not actually what's happening in this particular case. Do I have any coffee left here? Got to think about this. So maybe if we look at, well, I mean, okay, well, oh, itchy ear. Excuse me. Yeah, okay. Open help index. Now what we want is that reload command, right? Whoops. Reload index. Reload package. So we want to jump into the core. If reload and it's not the initial load, then it calls reload help index. Which is this one, which says, doesn't say rescanning. It says reloading help index for package, or yeah, like that one. Then it calls underscore load help index before it does stuff to it. So does this not pick up? Da, da. Load resource. If it loads it, oh, I should be loading these files magically, huh? Attempt to load and decode the UTF-8 encoded string with normalized line endings, returning the string on success or none on error. If no resources can be found with the resource specification provided, the call tries to load a file by this name from the packages folder instead. See, this is the problem. It calls load binary resource, but when it tries to load it, it can't find it. It gets the OS error because it hasn't had a chance to reindex that a new resource has appeared, right? And as a result of that, it passes through there and gets to the part where it tries to load the file from the packages path. Now, I would have thought that this would actually work, because the file that's in the packages folder represents the file that's in the package. But I guess an issue with that might be it doesn't know that there's an override yet, so it's still using the other version of the file. For loading the index, I probably should have just called load resource, huh? Then I don't have to write that code a second time to get the actual content. Ba-ba-ba. So maybe we should do that. That definitely seems like something that should be happening, even though we're not doing it. Common, that's this one. So we might say from import and load resource. Is that already in here somewhere? Can't be, right? Oh. Oh, sorry, that's the other one. Okay. So our code here was that business. We actually don't want to maybe do that so much. So we want to say content equals load resource, and the resource we want to load is package info.index file, the index for the package we were provided. Now this might return none. If content is not none, then we could do some stuff here. Now the problem with doing this way is, yeah, it is gonna kind of do what we want, but I think we want this realistically. Now this is going to catch the exceptions, so we can just do this and say if content is none, that. Just because we only want to do this business here to try to patch things up if the file doesn't actually exist. We don't want to force weird file open logic. So I don't know if that's necessarily going to have that much of an effect on what we're doing here, unless I broke it horribly. But it does make sure that the index is always opened in a appropriate, I say, appropriate Unix type way. That's how I deemed it should work before. Excuse me. Need a thing for that. Maybe we need, oh gosh, I can think of a lot of hacky ways to make something like this work. Like, for example, here, we could erase that setting and apply a new, underscore HH just created setting. Shouldn't be thinking inside my head while I'm on a live stream, but this has really thrown me for a loop that this would actually be the case. So what I'm thinking is this HH open int thing is currently, like a Boolean that's yes, this is opened internally and no, it's not. And it goes away in on pre-save. But its value could be 0 when it's not set, or false. Yep, if 0 else narp returns narp, because 1 is a falsy value but 1 is a truey value. So if 0 for HH open int meant the setting's not set, then 1 means it's set but hasn't been saved yet, and 2 means it has been set and it has been saved. So if that was the case, now we haven't really, done anything yet. So we're going to change this to 1, okay, like so. We're going to change this to 0. Now, we don't want to erase this. We want to set it to 2, because it was set to 1 here. 0 means not done. 1 means it has been flag file as opened but not yet saved to disk. Still does not exist. Okay. And here, flag file as saved now exists but not yet reloaded. Okay. And then def on post save self. If now we are ripping some stuff here. This bit here. If the setting to reload on index is turned on and this is an index and self.view.settings.get hh open int 0 equals 2. Oh, need another indent there. So before we save, we create the file folder, we make the directory if it doesn't already exist. And then we flag the file as saved but not yet reloaded, like so. Then on post save, if we're told that we want to reload on save and this is an index and the setting is 2, which should I think always be the case, but whatevs. Then we say here sublime.set timeout. And the timeout, the thing we would do here is lambda self dot view dot run command hyperhelp author reload index. And we'll probably maybe do this with a timeout of 250. And we will self.view.settings.erase hh open int like so. Sorry. Hey, this needs to be indented too because this is all part of the if. If we're told to reload and this is set, then we want to say print triggering a delayed reload of this help index. We erase the setting which removes this handler. Save that. We need to add, something about this in here as well. If, as the result of any save, the reload index on save setting is set, and this is an index, and there's a file name, and the file name exists, and view.settings.get with the default of 0 is not equal to 0, then reload. So standard indexes will just automatically reload because this will return 0 in the general case. Sorry, this should be equals 0, shouldn't it? Meaning that the default of this setting isn't set is set, then reload the index. In the specific, oh, did it again. On the specific case of this, that's going to happen. Okay, now let's see what this does for us. I'm going to edit help index for that. Now that's still there, so we're going to delete that. We're going to quit and we're going to restart, just so we got a nice fresh state. And we're going to edit help index for this, which we see has that information, right? And view dot is scratch returns true, which means our stuff is happening. This is a scratch file opened because this file does not currently exist. And if I browsed available help, I'd see that. Now I add this local changes and save. Now what we should see happen is only one reload after a little bit, and that would work because this one's not going to happen, and we're going to see it say triggering a delayed reload on this help index. But instead, I forgot something. On post save async. Oh, I left that on when I wasn't supposed to. But it still triggered a delayed thing, so there's the local changes. And let's try it again from a clean state. I'm kind of happy with how that sort of, worked out for us here. Ba-ba. Edit help index for this, and is it scratch? Yes. Okay, so I say local and save. We get triggering a delayed reload, reloading help index, reloading help index. Oh, shoot. Well, I mean, that did that part. Oh, the setting changed right away, didn't it? Hmm. The ordering of the event handlers is probably not something that's guaranteed. So the other one might have happened while the setting was still set to 2. Return true if and only if the named option exists in this set of settings or one of its parents. So what I probably wanted here instead is has open int blah 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 equals false, or not has. I find this way more readable. I'm awful that way. So first of all, let's delete that and let us again start from that. Okay. Edit help index and this one, and now I say with local save, still reloads it twice. I guess if the order that they happen in, it doesn't matter. Print, and view.settings.get open int. Okay. I want to see if we can get this working. Before we end the stream, this is just to see what the value of that thing is, because maybe I'm misconstruing what should actually be happening there. It's set to none. If that and that and that and that. Oh, because it's specifically, I specifically said false. All right, I guess maybe I do want not. Not none is true. Okay. Not false is true. I kind of don't like that doing it that way is less readable and is a slightly different semantic for what's going on behind the scenes. But, you know, what can you do? I'm not 100% sure that I'm down with this particular way around this problem, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it mostly does what I want. So, reloading help index, reloading help index. Maybe I'm an idiot and this is happening right away. Let's remove that. Whoa, let's remove that. And reload and delete, quit, restart, stabilize, edit help index, U, clear, save. The one in main is still happening. I guess it's obvious that that's happening because the settings still exists. I think what we want is something like this. Def trigger. That and this to erase the setting, and the lambda is self.reload. And then those can be like so. So that, well, if we, yeah. No, don't save changes before closing. Quit, fire up. Now we say edit the help index for this. We make this say lock. We clear this console. Very quickly check to see who's chitter chattering. people talking about how so many IRC clients automatically join a channel when you start them, and no one ever turns that off. So every time they start IRC, they immediately enter default channels and have to quit. There, now we're getting only one reload. We're getting the value of the setting. Where am I doing that again? This thing. The setting still had a thing. We only want to do it when it doesn't have a setting. So that seemed to have called reload, and if we browse available help, we get the local. So that has indeed done what we wanted. Now let's go ahead and look at what sort of stuff we have here. So we added a new event listener for internal files to do magic stuff. When you try to open a help index, what we used to do is say if the local file doesn't exist, immediately generate an error and leave, otherwise open the file. Now we figure out what the path is. If it exists, we just open it like we used to. Otherwise, we load the resource version of the file from the packed package. If that doesn't work, we display an error message, which should really never happen, except that it's possible to execute that command with a specific package name. But even then, it requires a package info. But since when is error checking to make sure your code doesn't explode a problem? So we create a new file with an appropriate syntax for an index, set it to be Scratch, and then we can retarget it to have the appropriate path in it. And then when we run the command, we append the content, tell the mini-diff that it has that, and set a setting that says, hey, you're an internal file. Now what that's all going to do is create a tab that's associated with the file in the underlying thing, right? In the underlying um, view, it's marked as Scratch to make sure that it's not marked as dirty because the file is missing. So it mimics what would have happened if you opened the file, right? It's set as being Scratch, and then we have it sets a flag to know that something has happened there. Now over here in the event handler, we changed the existing on save to say that it should only try to reload a help index if the setting, where it used to be only if it's got the setting and it has a file name and it's an index, we now say if the setting is set and it's a help index and it has a file name and that file name exists, and we have a setting that's we don't have a setting that says that this file was opened from an internal thing, then reload. We also have a new event listener that's applicable only to items where the setting exists and has a value of non-zero. If the file, anytime the file is modified, if it was set to be Scratch, it's no longer set to be Scratch now. On pre-save, if the location of the file doesn't exist, we create it and then set a flag that says, yeah, this file probably exists on disk now. So go to town. And then after the save is done, if that diff setting or that index reload setting is set and this is an index and we should, the setting is set to we think we saved the file. Then after a little bit of time, trigger a reload command, which does that and turns the setting off. That makes sure that the main thing up here doesn't trigger. And it also actually does this a little bit later. Now, realistically, a lot of this test is the same for both of these things except for the view. And this one should probably also make sure that the file actually exists, because maybe the save failed, in which case we all don't want to reload it here for the same reason we don't want to reload it up there. Now, it's all well and good, but it does have this one problem, which is this. You can undo back to the point before this file had any stuff in it, which is irritating in the extreme. Now, here's a little, if I do this, I can't quite remember. I need the view class, I guess. Oh boy. Close has, there's something in here. I've probably talked about this idea in the past. Here it is, command history. I knew that I had seen something somewheres in this thing that tells you about the history of commands that have been executed in a buffer. Couldn't remember what it was called, but I know it has something to do with the undo stack. So let's see. Returns the command name, command arguments, and repeat count for the given history entry as stored in the undo redo stack. Index 0 corresponds to the most recent command, -1 to the command before that, and so on. Positive values indicate to look in the redo stack for commands. Return entries that modified the buffer. So here's my thinking on this. Okay, if I created a new, well, maybe we want to do that over here. If I create a new thing, if I said view dot command history for index -1, there wasn't a previous command, right? That's what this said. 0, the most recent command, -1, the command before that. We'll actually say that. Most recent command. Now, if I modified something like this, the most recent command was insert, and the command before that was none. So if view command history -1, if view command history 0 was the command append, and the command for command history -1 was backtick, or sorry, quote, then this view, that's the very first append call that was ever made, right? Now, here's something else I want to check. I'm going to open a new window for this because we want view event listener on command, on text command. Okay, so it does have that ability. We are at 15 minutes past the end of this thing, but there's just something I want to test out here, if you will. So I'm going to close that. Consider this sort of, extra work. So this would be def on text command for self command args. If command is undo, print the user is undoing in an internal file. Okay, save that, reload. Maybe we'll also, maybe I already do that? I did, so maybe we'll stop seeing that error thing happening there. Okay, so I edit help index. Whoops, I gotta close that. I edit help index for hyper help. If I push Control Z, we see it saying the user is undoing in an internal file, and it undid too much. I can Control Y to redo it and put it back. That's a bit of a bummer. Now, what I could say here is this. If, okay, what the hell was that thing actually called? Let's open a new, again, a new, well, no, I guess I can actually do that here. Command history. Just to say, the most recent command. Most recent command is equal to self.view.command history for 0. And that's most recent is the name of the command, and the rest of the items can be thrown away. I don't care about what arguments were provided. And prev recent bang bang is equal to self.view.command history minus 1. So we do want to put that anyway. Well, maybe we don't actually care about that. We know what's happening. If most recent is equal to append and prev recent is equal to this, then return nope. Blocking undo of initial insert. Okay. Close this tab. Yeah, close without saving. That's good. Now, we need to close this. Here's what we're going to say. We're going to say edit this help index. Bang. Now, I'm going to clear that. I can type some stuff, and I can undo it. Still let me go too far. So that's no good. Print most recent, prev recent. See if I got the order of those wrong. Edit help index. Oh, you know what? I probably should have done that. Never too late to do it correctly. Okay. This is a test. Okay, I can go. It's insert, 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 move to. Move to append. Okay, that did not quite do what I thought. Let's try one more time. Undo this. Okay. Most recent, prev recent. Maybe we should put these in a specific order. And then we'll call her quits because we are going long here. Kind of makes up for being a little short. Okay, I should have reloaded this time. Edit help index. The most recent command is append, and the previous recent command is nothing, so it blocks that. Move append. So modifying only equals true. Might be something that is interesting to us. So, okay. Apparently, move is a modifying command, or that doesn't do what I think it does. Maybe I have the order of these wrong. How about this? -1, -2. That was something that should have worked, right? Zero corresponds to the most recent command, -1 the command before that. So if the command before the current command was append and the command before that was nothing, block the undo. Okay, that seems like the logic of that sounds sane-ish. Blocking undo. Yeah, that's still reloading. Maybe is the thing. I don't know if I did that or not. Block. Oh. Okay, there might be an extra case there. If most recent in, how is this for a hack? Append and the empty string and pre-recent is equal to that. Okay. This is just getting wildly out of hand, but as a proof of concept, it's kind of interesting, I think. Can't undo that. Can't undo that. This is some text. Oh, see, but now it's gone a little doolally. Could be some more work to be done there. I just don't like the idea of being able to back up past the point at which, reload that, the point at which the buffer was actually loaded, but maybe there's no good way around that. In any case, we have gone 22 minutes and 42 seconds over our designated time, so we're going to call this. I'm going to change the title because we did spend the entire 2+ hours working on something that is not what I expected to work on. So maybe I'll work on that this week. Maybe we'll work on that next week. We'll find out. But for now, I'd like to thank you for watching. Remember, if you have any comments on this video or other videos on this channel or my other channel, leave them in the comment section on a video or hit me on Twitter at OdatNurd. If you have suggestions for something we could work in a live stream or in a video on the other channel, do the exact same thing. Like these things if you find them useful. Subscribe if you find them exciting. Until then, this is a very frustrated OdatNurd giving you the salute and asking you to have a sublime day.